its advantage, the Sydney Kings in the Australian National Basketball League Final Series.
As well has not been great. And on the other side, Steve Suarez with a high degree of authority throws that one down. Finish by Suarez.
Sydney go 2-1 up in the series and head to New Zealand on Sunday with the chance to become back-to-back NBL champions.
Yeah, that's pretty self-explanatory there. The Sydney Kings have won Game 3, 91-68 to take a 2-1 lead in the best-of-5 series. The Breakers produced an entirely forgettable second half, scoring just 21 points, the fewest by any team in any game this season in a second half of National Basketball League action. One of the voices on the call last night was former professional player turned basketball writer and commentator Liam Santamaria. Liam, we loved the coverage last night, if not the result over here. Can you explain the Breakers' inexplicably poor second half for us?
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was poor, wasn't it? So much on the line in that Game 3 to take that decisive 2-1 advantage, and they just couldn't get anything happening at the offensive end throughout that second half. As you say, 21 second half points. It was just 12 in the third quarter, and then when things got desperate, the Kings strangled them even more, just 9 in that fourth quarter. And you got to credit the Sydney Kings and their effort at the defensive end. They've got the Breakers worked out at that end of the floor at this point in the series. And some soul searching and some problem solving needs to take place for Mody Maor and his coaching staff leading into tomorrow's Game 4.
Can you just drill down for us into the way the Sydney Kings played in that second half? I mean, obviously the Breakers weren't making any shots, but a lot of that, as you've just outlined, was the way that the Sydney Kings hustled on defence. Can you just drill down into what you saw from them that was so effective in the second half?
One of the things that the Kings do is they pack the paint with their bigs. So their two bigs, Tim Suarez, Xavier Cooks, Geordie Hunter, Courtney, whichever two of those guys are on the floor, they keep them in the paint, close to the rim. And as a result, the Breakers aren't getting anything easy at the rim. You look at a guy like Jarrell Brantley, he shot at 54% on 2-point field goals over the course of the season. And he's about 30% now in this grand final series in those same areas because the length and the positioning of the Kings is causing them a lot of trouble. And now with those guys packed in the paint, they tell their other three guys, crawl into the ball, get out and pressure the ball and those guys on the perimeter. And that's why Will McDowell-White, Barry Brown Jr., those Isaiah Liafa, they're finding it difficult to find space out there. And then the Kings say, we will live with little floaters and long 2-point pull-up jump shots. And if they're going to make them at a consistent rate, well, we tip our hat and we say good luck to you. And the Breakers, they've gone cold in those areas. Will McDowell-White was on fire with his mid-range game and his floaters in Game 1, but they haven't been knocking them down ever since. So as a result, frustration starting to build for the Breakers. They're not getting easy looks, and then as a result, they're not ticking the scoreboard over.
So for Game 4 then, there's not a lot of time for Coach Mody Maor and his staff and these players to get hot again. As you've mentioned, they were stone cold last night for some of that second half. What is front of mind for Mody Maor today as he hops on a plane, comes home and prepares for Game 4 tomorrow?
I reckon it's a little bit less about the X's and O's. They made some slight adjustments in that way heading into Game 3, which I think in the first half worked pretty well. A little bit more sort of side pick and roll than mid pick and roll, just kind of moving things around a little bit. I reckon the focus will be more for him on the psychology of his team. The fact that they need to come into Game 4 not feeling the pressure of their season being on the line, but rather playing with a reckless abandon and a confidence to just, as Tom Abercrombie described it in the post-game press conference last night, come out all games guns blazing and let that thing fly with confidence, start knocking down shots and, get that what's going to be a massive crowd at Spark Arena engaged early and try to sort of build some momentum from there.
Let's talk about the Sydney Kings offence. All of the starting five, and in fact 6 players in double figures last night. Who stood out, though, for you offensively in a Kings singlet?
Derek Walton Jr. was that guy for me. We were obviously intrigued to see his status and his health and how well he was moving coming into Game 3, and he took a little while to warm into the game, to be honest, but he got there, and you could see some signs of it late in the second quarter as he was exploding towards the rim and making plays. And then, he really was terrific in that third quarter, that second half. Ends up with a near, one assist off a double-double. He was really the orchestrator of that Sydney offense throughout that second half. But to be honest, the Kings look good offensively when they are in lockdown mode at the defensive end, because then they can get out and run and play with some rhythm and flow offensively, and that's what took place there in that second half.
Xavier Cooks, we're so interested in Xavier. Obviously, we got the chance to watch him play in our National Basketball League over here last season for the Wellington Saints, off to the Washington Wizards, of course. Liam, how do you assess his ability to make an impact in the NBA?
Good question. He's certainly an NBA athlete. He brings a unique skill set in that he's got this amazing ability to rip it off the defensive glass and then push it in transition and make plays. He's got really good ball handling skills for a bigger guy, has great court vision. You saw it last night, beautiful pass he made underneath to an open player at the rim amongst traffic. So if he can put himself in positions to maximize those strengths, I think he has a potential to have really good success. Now, the issue for Zave is he doesn't shoot the three ball very well. So if the ball's in other people's hands and he's spaced out to the corner and they're relying on him to be able to step up and knock down open threes, well, he's going to be a little bit out of his comfort zone in that regard. So hopefully the Wizards allow him to play to his strengths. He can minimize his weaknesses and come out there and have the kind of impact that he's had in the Sal's NBL and he's had over here in the ANBL, where he's been winning MVP trophies.
So you've talked about what you think the Breakers might need to do ahead of Game 4. What about the Sydney Kings? What do you expect from them tomorrow night? I guess they have in the back of their minds that it's not sudden death. If they do happen to lose, they've got a Game 5 up their sleeve back on home court next Wednesday. How do you expect the Kings to attack it tomorrow?
No major changes from the Kings' perspective. That's the beauty of the series. The onus really is well and truly on the Breakers here to make adjustments. And to be honest, that's kind of how the Kings operate. They do what they do, and they don't really change it very much for any of their opponents all season long. And after they lost Game 1, they came into Game 2. They didn't make any massive changes. They just did what they do at a higher rate with more intensity and more energy. And so that's what I expect from them tomorrow, a chance to close this thing out. So plenty of motivation in place. Chase Buford won't have to do anything to get his guys up for that kind of opportunity, and they're just going to need to, come out with that same kind of energy defensively and see if the Breakers have any solutions.
The other feature of last night, Liam, was the crowd, a record crowd of over 18,000 in attendance there last night. Just astonishing. How was it being right in the eye of the storm there last night in that arena?
Oh, it was awesome. You could just feel the energy kind of vibrating right through your body. It's an enormous arena, and it's an NBA sort of style arena there in Sydney. And for the entire top bowl to be full to the brim, 360 degrees around the court, record-breaking stuff, as you say, the biggest crowd in NBL history. And there were a couple of moments in that game where the Kings hit some big shots that were a result of a mini run that kind of turned the sway of the game, and the crowd noise was deafening. The energy in the building was enormous, and in such a big building, you can imagine, how cool that was to experience. So very cool for the players, very cool for NBL owner Larry Kestelman, but also the Sydney Kings ownership group, Paul Smith and his team, to see all their hard work over a period of time come to fruition on such a magical night for basketball in Sydney.
Indeed. All right, mate, I know you've got to jump on a plane, but just before you do, I saw your tweet earlier from the airport. I think the trophy heading to Auckland, it's all in its protective casing. You reckon that gets presented tomorrow night, or it stays in its case and goes back the other way for Game 5?
Oh, man, I picked the Breakers for the series leading in, but I've got to be honest, I feel like the Kings have them worked out at this point. So it would surprise me if we're back in Sydney next Wednesday night. I hope we are, because you always, from a neutral perspective, want this series like this to go the distance. But, man, I think the Sydney Kings are rolling right now, and I think that thing might get presented tomorrow.
All right, we'll wait and see. Great pleasure to have you on the show, Liam. Travel safe and look forward to seeing what plays out tomorrow and hopefully, fingers crossed, on Wednesday as well.
Cheers. Great to chat.